Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you joined us. And wherever you are around the world watching a Good Life TV, we welcome you. You can always go to goodlifetelevision.org, and where you can see all the episodes and along with a lot of power clips. And if you're joining us on the podcast, Good Life Conversations, we welcome you as well. We're so glad you're with us. We have a special guest today. I'm really excited to talk with her. Monique Dupuis is with me. Monique, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So Monique is in Winnipeg, and Monique and I have something in common, which is we're both parents of children with special needs. And we have been in this world for many years. And we want to talk a little bit about Monique's journey. And so first of all, Monique, just tell us a little bit about kind of your, family and background before we get into your journey with Zachary.
Sure. I'm a mom of three. I have my oldest, who's going to be 16 soon, Wesley, my stepdaughter, who's going to be 15 this summer, and my youngest son, Zachary, who is 8, going to be turning 9 in a couple of months. And I started the Doman kind of journey with my oldest. I taught him how to read. He was diagnosed with autism at a young age, but at this point now he can attend regular high school. He's taking regular classes. He's super bright. Most people don't even know about his diagnosis. And when my youngest came along, he's a spitfire. He threw us for a loop. We did a lot of the same things with him that we did with my oldest, but we needed more. And so we started working with Doman International. But yes. So I run a home daycare. I live in Winnipeg in Canada.
And by the way, we want to point out your YouTube channel, Early Learning Mom, if you're a mom out there watching this. So, and when we refer to Doman, what we're talking about is there's an organization that we partner with called Doman International. You can go to domaninternational.org, DOMAN international.org. And these folks for decades, literally, decades, have been helping families with a special needs child learn how to help their child. One of the things that happens when you bring home a child with special needs is you ask yourself, what do I do? How can we help? And it can be very overwhelming. It can be very intimidating. It can be very, there can be a lot of despair and hopelessness in this world. And I think, Monique, you'd probably agree with that. I mean, especially if you don't have answers. But let's talk about the story of your youngest, Zachary. So Zachary is born. There's a difficult pregnancy. Thankfully, he made it to 37 weeks. You had some kind of a misdiagnosis or misleading medical advice regarding some medicine that was given to you. Yes. And then he ends up, being delivered. He's blue. He's not in good shape, but was resuscitated.
Yes.
And then you end up going home, and I was reading kind of about what he was doing, where he was when he was about 4, which I believe that there's a mom or a dad out there right now who's watching who may have an autistic child or a child with developmental disabilities who may be exhibiting some of these symptoms. And I think it's powerful to talk about the before we get to the after. So yes. Monique, walk through kind of where he was when he was 4, what he was doing, because I know you kind of got to a little bit of a breaking point in terms of, what do we do here? So just talk through kind of where you were then.
Well, Zachary was super, super hyperactive. And when I say hyperactive, I don't mean just like a busybody. I mean, we're talking danger. Probably at around the age of 3, in the middle of the night, he got out of his room. There was a gate up and everything. And I heard my microwave beeping in the middle of the night. And I came in to find him standing on the stove. He had turned an element on. Luckily, it hadn't gotten hot, and he was playing with the microwave.
Oh my God.
And so now I'm at the point I can't sleep because I don't know if he's safe. I can't, it's very difficult to leave him with anybody because the second you turn your back, he's into something, he's pouring something, he's running. We had a tutor at one point that was working with him. We were doing some ABA, and I told her, I'm like, when you go outside, you need to make sure you have his hand. And, oh, yeah, I work with lots of kids. And he broke free from her and ran into the street. And luckily there was no cars, but this is the stuff we lived with. We were fearful when we were invited anywheres because we didn't know if he was going to be safe. And we had to walk with a death grip on his hand just for his safety. And yeah, so at that point, he was very also aggressive because he couldn't vocalize what he wanted. He is an extremely bright child, but he couldn't, he would get frustrated very easily. And we had scratches from frustration from him on us, bites. I had to be very careful with him around other children. He loved other kids, but if he got frustrated, he would bite. And so we were at the point we just really didn't know what to do. And it was really difficult. It was very difficult on my mental health. And obviously on him, it wasn't, it's no life to live when you can't protect yourself, and you don't,
Right.
you're just, the impulse control was so difficult for him.
Right.
So yeah.
And it's not a parenting issue. Let's be real clear. I mean, I think that's one of the
No.
things about some of these, whether it's autism or hyperactivity or ADD or whatever it is, that sometimes people, I think, can look at and go, gosh, get your kid under control. That is not possible. So, I mean,
that was frustrating for me. I had two older children that are completely well behaved. I could take them anywheres, and I got comments, not directly to me, but other people would say behind my back, well, if she would just spank him, he wouldn't touch the TV. He wouldn't do. And it's like, honey, no. Like, if that's first of all, I don't do that. Second of all, even if I did, it wouldn't work. Like, it's a brain issue. It's not a behavior issue.
Right.
So, yeah.
So the symptoms you talked about: biting, it's scratching, constant hyperactivity, destructive, breaking things, not able to converse, couldn't follow simple instructions. He was bothered. The noise was a huge issue, which I think is very common for this situation. So he was constantly covering his ears. Can you imagine just being tortured by that? That is just so painful to think about. Didn't care who was around him. Didn't crawl till he was 11 months, was a late walker at 16 months. And then you were living in constant fear of him sneaking off or getting away, which I think is just a parent's nightmare. So that's where we were. So then you end up getting in touch with the Doman International friends. Talk about, what did they do? What did they tell you to do? What did you do? Sometimes we talk about the Doman method or the program, and people go, well, tell me what that is. You and I know, but talk through. So you get home from Doman. What do you start doing with Zakari that starts to turn this situation around?
I think it's important to know that Zakari technically was on a Doman program from birth. We did do reading with him. So he was reading and, doing all of that stuff at a very young age. So we kind of had the upper hand there. But when it came to the physical, it was the physical program and the respiratory program that really helped organize his brain. The creeping, the crawling, the productive running, doing that kind of stuff, it helped organize his brain in a way that he could settle down. And he was getting more oxygen to his brain. We changed his nutrition program. Like, we changed his foods to a gluten-free, dairy-free, low sugar, and artificial coloring free diet. And that made huge changes in his behavior as well. Making sure that he had the proper nutrients going in, proper supplements. And we started noticing a difference. I think we took him down in August for his first assessment. I had taken the course a year before, and I started implementing the stuff that I had learned during the course, and people were already noticing a difference in him. But we kind of hit that point where I needed more help. I needed more like of a refined program. And when we came back from Philadelphia, it was just huge changes in him. He could sit down and, read a book with me. He was sleeping better. His stomach issues were getting better. And he stopped hurting us, and he started using his words. And I remember a birthday party that we hosted for him, because we had stopped hosting birthday parties for him because it was just too overwhelming. And I'm like, this is supposed to be about him, and he's not enjoying it. And finally we were able to host a birthday party, and he was able to tell me when we were opening presents that I had enough, like I need a break, and he needed to break away from the group instead of having a meltdown and freaking out and crying and hurting people. He vocalized, I need, like, all done, I need a break. And we were able to step back, and
wow,
our family is just amazing. And they were totally fine with us, saving the rest of the presents. They wanted him to enjoy it. So we waited, and then we did them through video so he could do one at a time with a lesser crowd. But he's able to enjoy birthday parties now for himself and others. And he actually told me last year that, like, he suddenly got really into firefighters. His uncle's a firefighter, and we can go to their open houses now, and he enjoys that. And he told me he wants to be a firefighter when he grows up, where before he didn't care for anything. Like, he didn't have any special interests, and now he does.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm reading, he stopped his clothes. I think I'm guessing it was his sensitivity to touch.
Yeah.
So, which is a brain issue. So he would take his clothes off, but he stopped taking his clothes off.
Yes. We used a program.
Yeah,
we did a program with that, and it totally helped him. He can wear clothes now. I mean, he still prefers to play outside in just his, like, basketball shorts and stuff, but we have a rule that he has to wear pants, and he's cool. And he's cool with that rule now.
We have the same rule in our family.
Yeah.
Try to keep everybody with pants on.
Yeah.
But so he calmed down. So you're saying, I mean, this nutrition program, this tactile program, this breathing program, combined with creeping, crawling, or brain organization, he calmed down as a person.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. He is just a pleasure to be around. He's silly, he's goofy, he's just like a fun person to be around. Like, it used to be very, very stressful to be his mom, because I was scared. Like, as his mom, I'm responsible for his well-being, and I felt like a failure because he was constantly getting himself in danger. And now it's enjoyable. Like, we have routines and relationships, and he knows when certain people are coming over, and he has certain activities he knows that he goes to, and it's just, he's a different kid.
Isn't that amazing? And this kid who has ultra sensitive hearing ends up going to a Winnipeg Jets hockey game with 15,000 screaming people, and he was okay.
He was fine. He had his ear defenders on, but he was just screaming with them. Like, he was having a blast. Like, we won tickets, and it was amazing. He loves his Jets, and it was nice for him to have the experience to, go sit down and actually watch a real game instead of just on TV.
Right. And so now so you ended up having a second appointment. And so now he goes across the monkey bars. He's able to go across the monkey bars. Yep. He reads whole homemade books in his head and answers comprehension questions. says thank you without being prompted. Um, and he's developed stronger relationships with his family and his friends. You said he's excited when his grandparents come over, his cousins, or so that's a change, because now it's almost like with these symptoms reduced, you have a person and you get
Yep.
to meet. I mean, is that kind of what's happened for you?
Yes, we get to see who he is, and just his personality, his favorite books, his favorite, like what he likes to do, his activities. Yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
this whole world, and I wanted you to comment on this just because I think you and I have had the same experience. And before we came on today, we were both talking about how we can't imagine our life without Doman just because
Yes.
we were drowning. And then it's like somebody throws you a life raft. But to the parent who's out there who, and I know a parent like this actually. I know a parent whose autistic child literally takes his clothes off and runs around the neighborhood. One time ran into
Oh
the
my
neighbor's
goodness.
house naked,
Wow.
and you're going, what do we do? And I think so often the parents, whether it's sensitive tactile issues, the hearing thing, just the behavioral thing in general, we're all trying to treat the symptoms when
Mhm.
we need to treat it at the brain level. I mean, I think that's the probably, if you're gonna like cut the Doman method, the Doman work over decades down kind of into one succinct description, it would be, you got to treat the brain.
Mhm.
You want to get to the tactile. Why is he taking his clothes off? Treat the brain. You want to figure out why is that, how do we deal with this hearing? He's going crazy. He can't, is so sensitive. You got to treat the brain. And then even the nutrition stuff, you mentioned his stomach issues. I don't know what that was.
Mhm.
We had constant respiratory issues. We changed the diet and all of a sudden they're gone.
Yeah.
I mean, which is incredible. So anyway, talk about it. Just, we only have a few minutes left, but talk about treating the brain and what kind of revelation that has been for you, and in terms of your understanding your son.
Yes. Treating the brain. Yeah. Some of the programs that when we were introduced to, like the creeping and crawling, I'm like, he's done that. Like he's running and
Right.
jumping and climbing. Why do we need to creep and crawl? And then understanding how it's the cross patterning and it's helping organize the brain, getting him down on the floor, doing the little tummy crawls and the hands and knees crawls and the monkey bars. You can just see that his chest is getting bigger,
Right.
which gives more room for oxygen, which in his, for his lungs to take in more oxygen, which gets more oxygen to the brain, which helps him function better. And I can look at him and I can compare him to other children on the spectrum who tend to be, and I'm generalizing here, but a little heavier set because they're not getting these experiences to exercise their bodies and burn that energy off. And I look at Zakari and his physique, and he is like, we say he has the Spider-Man build. He's thin, but he's just pure muscle. And that
Yeah.
muscle is helping pump blood throughout his body, getting that oxygen to his brain. And I can tell when we get in all our brachiation, he's not crawling anymore. We're doing running. We've graduated to running and doing hikes and stuff. But when I get in his runs, his brachiation, even his cognitive programs, like his typing, he's typing now. He is calmer in the evenings. But if we miss some days, like, life takes over, he almost doesn't know what to do with this energy. He wants
Yeah.
to do the program so
Right.
he can get the blood flowing and his brain can start, continue working the way it needs
Right.
to. So yeah,
Right.
we definitely noticed by treating the brain, it eliminates a lot of these symptoms. And sometimes there's something that you'll be like, well, he hasn't done that in a really long time. And you don't even notice because you're not treating that symptom. you're treating the brain.
Right. And then sometimes it doesn't make sense because what you just said, your child mobility was not the issue. He was running, jumping. It was too much. It was,
Yeah.
and yet here you are creeping and crawling as a way to organize the brain. And it just makes sense to me. And then you do it and it works. And you're like, okay, I don't know why I don't understand this, but results is what we're looking for. So if my child improves, I mean, Ella Claire, our daughter, Monique, she is so happy doing the program, just like what you said about Zakari. It is like just the right thing. She was up this morning at 6:00. She's up. She calls. She says, "Dad, I'm up and at 'em," and she was ready to do the program. Last night, after a full day of doing the program, and my wife is just a saint, with this, as are you. But after a full day doing the program, she's always saying things like, "I'm just so proud of myself and all my accomplishments," And I realized it's not just about the end result. And okay, we were here and now we're there. It's this journey. It's about the journey, that every day there can be more sense of fulfillment and accomplishment. And because I'm doing this, does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. You can see the pride when, like, our most recent victory has been his typing. And before, if you presented him a keyboard, he'd just be banging on it, pulling the keys off. And now he sits there and he's like, okay, what word, mom? And like, you can see him like just squirming, like, okay, tell me. And he's typing couplets and he's just sitting there like so focused and determined. And even 6 months ago, that would not have been possible. And afterwards, he's just so proud of it that he did it. And, dad will come home and I'll be like, hey, do you want to show dad your typing? And he's like, yeah, I can spell daddy. And then he shows them, I can spell frog. And he shows them. And it's just beautiful. So amazing. And this is the kid that they said, oh, I'm sorry, he has a low IQ. We don't really know what he's going to be able to do. And it's like, dude, he reads better than you and he's 3. Like, how can he have a low IQ?
Right.
He just doesn't want to participate in your little games that you're doing right now because you don't know how to evaluate a child properly. But then we go to Doman International and they're like, okay, you realize how high of a reading comprehension this kid has? And they're pointing out all his strengths. And so while they're working on the weaknesses to help bring that up, and that's our end goal, they don't just ignore his strength that he's a brilliant reader. And they keep feeding that. And so I think that's what's great is they don't only look at the where most systems look at what is your kid defective in. And well, we're not going to work on the stuff he's good at because he's already good at that. And it's like, well, what about his self-esteem? What about, his passions? So that's what I really appreciate about Doman International is they work with his strengths and use that to build up his weaknesses.
So if you have a special needs child, we encourage you to go to domaninternational.org, or if you know somebody with a special needs child, autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, whatever it might be, Doman, D-O-M-A-N, international.org. We highly encourage you to go there. It's helped my family. It's helped Monique's family. And I was reading this just to wrap it up, Monique. We just have a couple minutes, but you said here, the most important thing is that he has hopes and dreams for his future. He told you, like you said, he wants to be a firefighter when he grows up. And then you talk about how now he tells you, I love you before he goes to bed. I feel like with some of these kids, and I think it's been true for us, and I think it sounds like it's true for you, that once you peel off the layers of these symptoms, when the symptoms calm down or go away, we end up with the child, the person. It's hard to get to that person until you get the symptoms dealt with by treating the brain. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And in both of our cases, because of Doman, because of these programs, we've gotten to peel back the layers of symptoms and gotten to this genius person that is Zachary, that is Ella Claire. So it's so encouraging to talk to you. I think people who are watching this are going to be really encouraged. And I hope they go to Dome International. But thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me and letting me share our story. It's really important to me that people know what happened with Zachary, so
Yes.
that we can have more Zacharis.
Yes.
As opposed to, frustrated children and frustrated parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you. Congratulations on what you're doing. I think you have treasures in heaven waiting for you, just like my wife. So congrats and thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next time.